But first, Hillary Clinton is back, and she's weighing in on Joe Biden's presidency and the upcoming midterms. Oh, goody.
From my perspective, President Biden is doing a very good job. I think that his handling of Ukraine, passing the American Rescue Package, the huge infrastructure package, I'm not quite sure what the disconnect is between the accomplishments of the administration and this Congress and the understanding of what's been done and the impact it will have on the American public and some of the, the polling and the ongoing hand-wringing.
Biden's approval has been on a steady decline, while his gaffes have been on the incline. Here's the latest. When he said the First Lady was vice president. Listen.
And I'm deeply proud of the work she's doing as First Lady with Joining Forces initiative. She started with Michelle Obama when she was vice president and now carries on.
The White House changing what Biden said in the official transcript, so he referred to himself as the former vice president. Lisa, let's begin with you. Look, admittedly, I'm not as tapped into D.C. as you. Was Jill Biden, in fact, the vice president during the Obama years?
Well, that's what I thought, but here's the thing. I think Hillary Clinton might be doing a little bit more than just hiking in her time in the woods. Maybe she's smoking the ganja, because no one thinks Joe Biden is doing a good job besides her. And, it's easy to laugh some of these comments off, but the rest of the world sees what we have in front of us. And we have a senile president who's not ready for the job and who should be spending time in the villages instead of the White House. I mean, did Putin invade Ukraine under Trump? No, he waited until Joe Biden was in office, until we had someone as weak and feckless as him. And it's not just Ukraine either. I mean, we just saw North Korea test the biggest intercontinental missile to date, the first one since 2017. Chinese provocations against Taiwan, the most in 40 years under Biden. This wasn't happening under Trump, because what did Trump do? When he drew red lines against Syria, he followed through with 59 Tomahawk missiles. He took out Qasem Soleimani. He was dropping the mother of all bombs in Afghanistan. So, we can laugh some of these things off, as sometimes, we do, but it is important because we have weakness on the world stage and all of our enemies are taking advantage of it right now. And the world is absolutely on fire.
That was a very solid answer, Lisa, except for one point.
Thank you.
I want to go to Tyrus with my unofficial question.
What did I do wrong?
When you were working with Snoop, Tyrus, well, let me get to it. When you were working with Snoop, Tyrus, did he ever refer to it as smoking the ganja?
No, that's right up there with, hey guys, you want to smoke some drugs? But you know what? That's not what it's about with Lisa, so that's okay. She's forgiven. I guess if she had dropped some really cool stuff, it would have changed the way we look at her.
I'm not cool enough for Snoop Dogg to be friends with me,
listen,
so,
Law and order every time. I respect that. But speaking of between the lines, you really need to listen to what Hillary Clinton said. She doesn't know what the disconnect is. This is her way of telling the base, I believe in you, and the extreme left, I got you, all our plans, but something's just not quite connecting. Oh, it's Joe Biden. I'll step in, take your stuff, and we'll take it to the moon. That's what she's doing, and I don't even know what hand wrangling is, so we need to worry about this. And just real quick, honestly, it pains me to see the president of our United States look this way. I don't enjoy taking shots at seeing what was once an intelligent man, his career, his 50 years in public service. You have to respect that, but clearly he's at the decline, and it's not even about what side of the aisle I'm on. It's about he's dangerous for the country because he's aging right before our eyes at a really fast pace.
Well, Larry, the American people know this. That's why Biden is polling around 40% in most polls. But according to Hillary, polls schmoles. Listen.
I do think hand-wringing is part of the Democratic DNA. That seems to be in style, whether we're in or out of power. We're in power, and there still is hand-wringing going on.
I mean, what presidency is Hillary watching, Larry?
Well, I think Tyrus may be onto something here. I was kind of wondering to myself whenever Hillary came back on, I mean, we can't get away from her. You don't see her husband, Bill Clinton, the former president of the United States, out there on, you know, all these media tours like Hillary is. She is constantly out there. And I'm kind of wondering to myself, I think like a lot of Americans, why is Hillary Clinton back out in front? Maybe, Tyrus, you're onto something with this. Perhaps she thinks she could just step in and take his spot. Remember, she lost her chance when my father-in-law became president. That was supposed to be her time. We really messed that up for her. So maybe she thinks she's just going to take, take the seat and will, not even know anything about it. But it's really amazing to see her try to play off polls. The polls, Hillary, are so bad because of all the things that Lisa explained, because the average person in America goes to the grocery store and their bill is astronomically more expensive than it was a year ago. They go to fill up their car with gas and they are just, their minds are blown by how much money they're having to spend, and it is unsustainable to people. We're weak on the world stage. We have an open border that's only going to get worse. People see a weak leader and they see that all of these things happen under Joe Biden. So that, Hillary, is the reason for the bad polling. But I guess we should just let you step in and call it a day, maybe.
Well, I mean, Lisa, I disagree with the panel. I mean, I think Joe Biden's doing a very good job when you ignore Afghanistan, inflation, gas prices, our standing in the world, crime. I mean, aside from that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play?
Yeah, I mean, if you just close your eyes and bury your head in the sand, then, he's doing great, right? It's just a stand-up job. But, yeah, like Laura is right. Look, Americans are seeing what is happening, right? They're seeing the fact that we have no control over our border. We're talking about Ukraine being a sovereign nation. We're not a sovereign nation. What are we doing at our southern border? Why are we allowing unfettered illegal immigration, people coming into the United States, cartel members, drug dealers, potential terrorists, the list goes on. What about our borders, right? Americans are seeing that we have a president who doesn't care about them, who's telling them as they're suffering with gas, just go out and get a $60,000 Tesla, go kickboxing, drink a margarita. They don't care.
Todd, in the words of Scooby-Doo, to your question, what are you talking about?
Exactly. Well, I think we often ask, what are you talking about when Joe Biden speaks? Here's just a montage from Europe.
If chemical weapons were used in Ukraine, would that trigger a military response from NATO?
It would trigger a response in kind. Look at how they're stepping up. Look at how they're stepping up. And you're going to see when you're there, and some of you have been there. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
And look, obviously we had a little fun with this block, but when a president makes statements like that on the world stage, those statements have ramifications. And there's going to come a point in time where the White House press office is not going to be able to clean up something Joe Biden said erroneously. And at that point in time, our nation and potentially our entire world could be in a world of trouble. The White House needs to figure this out and needs to figure it out sooner rather than later. Otherwise, we could all be in serious trouble.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.